Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Pilkington. I'm here with the one and only Justin Bumpy Woolridge. He is running for Klein ISD, so I appreciate you taking the time to be here with me. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
tell me a little bit. I know we've talked about why you're running. I think you've ran, well, I don't think, I know you've ran before. What are some of the issues that are going on in the district that are concerning for you right now?
I would say one of the largest issues that is concerning to me right now is the FNG and DGBA policies, procedural policies that are in place right now. These policies, for those that don't know, are the key policies that are rooted for conflict resolution, whether it be
Where
from
do
a
these come
student.
from? Like when you mention these letters, where did they come from? Like what are they a part of?
These are
Or how
Klein
does this
ISD. This is what Klein ISD has named them. So FNG local is the parent student constituent grievance or complaint process, and DGBA is the teacher or employee, district employee grievance or complaint process.
so these are the procedures that Klein ISD has in place when something has gone array or there's a concern that they actually go down this process to deal with or handle what's going on.
So typically what this process would entail would be someone that works for Klein ISD or a constituent parent or student of the district that has an issue that arises and they would like to talk more deeply about it. They would initiate or enact these policies. It's a procedural policy where you get online at the website. It's a buried, embedded file that you have to find and you have to print out. You have to fill it out with the information that you want to discuss and why you feel like you were, grieved or you're complaining against it about a certain topic. You have to submit it, and then that starts the process. And one of the key things that I want to bring up about this process is that this is not a user friendly process at all. This process, I'm class of 1995 from Klein ISD. And when I graduated, if there was an issue between a student and a teacher, or a parent and a teacher, or a teacher and an admin, that was handled in a very efficient and effective manner. It was a 3-step process. It started off with the grievant or the person making the complaint and whoever they were making the complaint against. That was meeting number one. If that didn't go anywhere, then it was the person bringing the grievant or complaint, the teacher, and the administrator of the school. That was process number two. Step number two. And then step number three was all those involved and the superintendent or the board of trustees at the time. This all happened literally within, from start to finish, the process could be done in less than a week and a half. And usually it never got to the point of involving the board or the superintendent for that third step. It was usually handled with the local school administration, and an equitable solution was decided on for all parties that helped all parties. Now what we have is both of these policies are made to extend everything out. At a minimum, if once you engage in this and once you submit your first piece of paperwork, you're looking at a minimum of 70 days. 70 days to resolution. And this is not 70 calendar days. This is 70 school days. So take into account everything else, the holidays, the new schedule that we have where they have a week off almost every month, several days off every month. You're talking about a policy that if you filed it on day one of school, your resolution might be coming by the end of Christmas break at the earliest.
So these are parents that have bullying kids or a teacher that has an issue with somebody else, maybe another teacher, or real issues, real-time issues that aren't getting handled for 70 days, like
Correct.
way out. And you don't realize the process until you actually need it and have to go through it. Then when you're pulling back these layers, it's like, holy moly, there's no, I don't want to say justice, but it seems like there's no resolution. And then we wonder why there's so much angst and just like this feeling in the classroom and feeling from students and teachers. There's no support in essence to get a resolution. So whatever the issue is, it's just lingering on you.
So it's a good point that you bring up because it does. It literally lingers. And the more anything lingers, and I don't know how you are personally, but me personally, I like to hit the bull, take the bull by the horns and hit everything head on. If there's something that needs to be worked out, business wise in the corporate world, you cannot just play the merry-go-round and let it keep going because the more you do, the worse it gets. So, and that's exactly how this process is. It's it's truly put in place for you to see, to feel the hurt, to feel the lingering effects of have to wait 10 days. So that's something that I should point out. You submit the paperwork, they have 10 days to respond and hear your first piece of it, right? And then once you sit down, Klein has everything mapped out in these real finite windows of time. So you have submit it, they have 10 days to respond. Once you respond, that now becomes day 0, and now they have 10 days from that point to get you a written statement as to how they feel on your what they would call their level 1 at that point. If you received that statement and did not agree with it at that point and you filed on that day, that now becomes day 0 for your level 2. Then they have 10 more days. So you can see how the days start adding up very quickly. And once you get into the level 3, then it's 15 days. And you never truly do get to sit in front of the board and have your time with your elected officials. And so the FNG process is made for exactly what you said. Major issues that come up, anything that people feel like they just can't discard. Perhaps try to talk to a teacher. Perhaps you've tried to talk to an administrator. Perhaps it's something along those lines that should be easily rectifiable in a very short period of time with a few conversations or maybe a meeting. And now you've just extended that off for anywhere from 70 to 120 days. So I've been involved in this process before. I've been involved and seen it firsthand. And literally, I've seen it, the fastest I've ever seen it go through was about 80 days. And the longest I've seen it take is about 120 days. And I have a stack, 3 books right here that are all teachers and employees of Klein ISD that have called me since I ran last year and spoke a lot about FNG policy. I've spoken a lot about it at current board meetings, recent board meetings as well, and they've called me for advice. And I have it logged, and I have 3 books full of people that have called me to tell me their stories and ask for advice and how to navigate this process because they get so upset they throw their hands up and they say, I'm not doing this anymore. And my honest opinion is that's exactly how the policy is written. They want that to happen. They want you to get to the point where you give up.
So who's they and who wrote this policy or who approved the policy?
Well, the policy was approved by the board. The original policy was approved by the board. The policy has been revamped twice in the last 12 months, and both times it was revamped in the last 12 months. The only positive that came out of it was that they gave the initial complaint or grievance, instead of 10 days to file, they gave you a 15-day window. And I think that was
Can
largely
we
in part to
can we
go ahead.
talk about that? So they give you
Sure.
15 days. So as a parent, when we have a kid, I have a little one in elementary school. We know that kids are kids. We know they're learning, they're developing. Sometimes that something happens and you're like, how do I handle that? How do I proceed for the best interest of my child, for the other child? Is there a learning experience here? What do I need to do to protect my kid? Like the little kid that was attacked at the playground. Like what level of playing soccer? I don't know if you guys saw that, but what level and when do you intervene for your child on behalf, or what, like, do you let them work it out and build their coping skills and their ability to handle things without having adult intervention? Sometimes as kids, they need that. They need to be able to handle stuff. I think that's where we have a huge breakdown with Dr. Jenny McGowan. She cannot handle conflict resolution, which we'll get into that in a minute. But when something happens with your child and in the classroom with another kid, it's like, is this bullying or is this just kids being kids?
Hmm.
So you wait on it. You're like, let me just wait and see how this washes out because I'm not gonna just knee jerk react. And when you realize, wait a minute, the first event happened here, and then you're seeing a pattern, so you go ahead and reach out. Does it time out from the event
It
occurring? Like
does.
what happens with that, and who says that it's timing out? Like what is that?
It does. So the policy actually states, and I know the policy frontward and backwards, which is, I've read up on it way too many times trying to help way too many people. And it truly does. So let's take an example of use your example you just had. So there's a situation that happens at school between 2 kids, and they come home and they tell you about it as their parents, right? This happened at school today. You're right. Kids need to maintain and kids need to learn how to work things out and kids need to learn how to work through things. And sometimes what may seem bad for one kid is not necessarily deemed bad in a situation. It's more of a like you called it, a learning lesson, right? A coping mechanism or whatever they have to do. We have to teach our kids to grow up and become contributing members of society at the same time, but we need to protect them as well. And there is a timeout date. So you have 15 days from the original occurrence. So let's just say that today is now Monday, September 22nd, correct? If your son comes home from school today and tells you that he's being bullied, as a parent, and I know this is what I did in my situation. As a parent, what I did was I sat back and I talked to my child. I wanted to get to know the ins and outs of why they felt they were being bullied. And, at first they didn't want to open up at all. They kind of recluse back in. They kind of become an introvert. They don't want to let the information out.
Yeah, even if they tell you, kids don't tell you stuff for
Right.
sometimes weeks. You're like, "What happened in class?" And it may be another friend that tells you that he got pantsed at school or whatever. You don't always have that information.
Correct. And so you try to pull the information out of them while you're also sending emails and trying to contact the teacher or contact anybody that may have been involved that saw it. You try to get all aspects of it, right? Because you can't ever just charge everything, at everything head on without having all the information as to exactly what happened. And but you're stuck, you have a 15-day window. The day of the event is day 0. So if your son is bullied today, today is day 0. You have 15 school days from today to file a grievance or complaint, FNG or a DGBA. So if a teacher feels like she was accused of doing something that she didn't do today, she has 15 days to contemplate whether or not she wants to go, he or she, I should say, want to take it further action against Klein ISD. So very finite windows that you had to work in. I do want to point out that it used to be 10 days. And 3 board meetings in a row, I spoke on FNG and I spoke about how, these kids, if a kid is truly being bullied at school, which my son did have experience with that, he shut down. He shut down. He didn't want to talk about it. It was tough for us to pull information out of him. He just assumed, let it go, and he took matters into his own hands and started going back hallways through the high school. He started avoiding, certain people at the high school. He spent a lot of time in his counselor's office at the high school. And by the time it got to us, we were right up against that 10-day window when we found out about it. And so I literally, the day that it got to us with the depth of information that we had at the point, I filed immediately because if I wouldn't have, it would have been dismissed based on timeliness of filing alone. And so with me speaking repetitively at the school boards, that created the secondary change where they now gave you a 15-day window as opposed to a 10-day window, because I told them, we're a zero tolerance bullying district. That's what we claim. That's what we tout, right? That's what we put on the walls at all the schools. Bullying is not going to be allowed here. We're zero tolerance. Well, what you see is that it actually can happen. It can be done. And there's zero tolerance as long as you bring it to their attention within 15 days. If you're on day 16, you file the paperwork, it's
That is
dismissed.
absolutely mind-blowing. If you have a child that's getting bullied, truly bullied in school, which truly bullied, whatever, they need to work through this conflict with this person. This other person needs to be taught boundaries or speak their piece or their mind and say their truths, whatever. However, they just sweep it under the rug. It's just let go. So it allows and exacerbates this problem to continue on, which harbors this feeling, which is you're never dealing with it. And then we wonder why these kids get so angry or have these issues when they get up and I was bullied all through school. This just totally exacerbates that whole issue and concern. And from the teacher's perspective, they're busy working. They're doing everything they have to do. Don't know what you don't know. And this is absolutely insane. This is created by the board. The board allows this to happen. They allow this free pass because it's not in their time frame. I'm sorry, when it comes to our kids and our teachers and we're not taking care of them, there is an issue in that. This has been Bumpy's biggest concern. He has learned, read, because he's been through it, been there, done that. And also, how many federal lawsuits are against Klein ISD right now because parents and teachers are not being heard? They're not getting a resolution because our school board has allowed this to continue and they're not letting parents and students be heard.
I 100% agree with you. In regards to the federal lawsuits, the last number that I heard was upwards of 7 or 9. I don't know where it stands today.
Too many. 7 or 9 federal lawsuits. These are families, these are teachers, these are parents. I'm going to paint this picture for you because what happens is they've gone through the process. They've gone all the way through this 70, 90, 150-day process of handling a grievance. What in the world is this nonsense? Handling a grievance, going through this process, still not getting heard, still not feeling effective. We're not even going into the grievance process on tier 3. What happens when you go in with an outside person that listens to your story?
Yeah, we haven't got there yet.
We haven't, but you go all the way through this process and they're still moving forward with the federal lawsuit. How much are we spending in attorney fees whenever we're already broke? We don't have the money in the budget, and all somebody had to do was lend an ear, listen, and provide solutions, which is what you do every day, Bumpy, at work. You listen, you provide solutions, and it is not hard when you're dealing with people. They want to be heard. And what are they not getting? They're not being heard. What is
Correct.
what did the board do? What did they just pass? The resolution that they just passed for plausible deniability?
So in FNG used to fall under superintendent, and it had superintendent listed throughout the policy. So anytime you received any kind of documentation back from your grievance or complaint that you did not agree with, you were supposed to basically write a letter or put an email together to the superintendent. So the superintendent's name was throughout the entire policy. Now what they've done is I believe it was 4 months ago now, approximately 4 months ago in one of the board meetings, FNG and DGBA came back up for reevaluation, and now superintendent has been removed from the policy and it has been turned over and changed to chief of schools.
So
So now,
basically, the CEO, the board, the Klein ISD board gave the CEO of Klein ISD company a free pass. So this CEO doesn't have to know what's going on within her company. So she is free to go take pictures at the schools and have photo ops.
correct. What
Sorry.
it does is if you've been through the process, even before they made that change, I had been through the process. And so when you would send your email off to the superintendent, stating that this is what's going on, the response you would get is, "So sorry, dear Mr. Wooldridge, so sorry you are experiencing this. I have contacted such and such chief of schools, and they will be in touch with you to discuss this matter further." The discussion never happens. So what ends up happening is you end up getting an email that states, "This is your next step," right? Your next step is to put this into this FNG local or DGBA process. They push you to this process. And the reason they push you to this process is because, one, it's cumbersome. 2, it's lengthy. 3, most people don't see it all the way through. And 4, because level 3, if you were to read FNG as it sat, let's say this time last year, it had the level 3 was supposed to be an independent, third-party independent hearing officer. Through a lot of research and a lot of effort, we came across the information of who these third-party hearing officers were, and there's nothing independent about them. They're all former Klein ISD employees. Former chief of HR, former chief of this, former principal of this school. And Klein ISD pays them to hear this level 3 process, which is basically started off as a simple complaint, this is happening to my child, or this is happening to me as a district employee, and Klein ISD pays them, which is another part I want to touch on, because FNG and DGBA both say that each party is responsible for any monetary payment due from this. And so I've actually spoken to one of Klein ISD's attorneys and asked him where I'm supposed to send my check and my payment. And I was told that only comes into play when you have legal counsel involved. And I said, nowhere in this policy does it say anything about you're responsible for your own money when it comes to if you get legal counsel. It just says each party is responsible for their own portion of the fees. Well, this is a fee associated with the policy that they have written. And if Klein ISD is paying this fee to these people that they have on the list to hear it, then there's inherently a bias there already, right? So they changed They changed over from independent third party, right? Independent party to what they now have it. The verbiage they now have in there is a non-district employee, which
It's
is very
convenient.
ironic and very funny because when I've been through this process, as I said, and when I went to my level 3, I called them out on it. And I told them that I did not want a former Klein ISD employee, that I wanted to make sure that I paid my own way. So there was absolutely zero bias sitting down at the table. And this was a bullying situation. And it was a clear cut bullying situation that I have a 4-inch binder of statements from students, counselors, you name it, that stated was bullying. And they gave me the strangest look, like I'm the first person that's ever called this out to their attention. And next thing I know, they give it to some guy by the name of Dr. Timothy Walsh. So, of course, I do my research to know who I'm walking into a room with and who I'm going to be speaking with. And Dr. Timothy Walsh is a former educator in the Willis Independent School District sector. So he actually worked for Willis ISD for many years. And so I tried to find a connection as to why we'd be using somebody from Willis. It just seemed odd and out of place to me. We're going to get somebody to drive, 40 miles down here to get paid. I don't know what they pay for the process, right? Maybe it's good money. I don't know. But what I found was that at one point, Brian Greeny, our chief of schools, left Klein ISD and went back to work where he lives in his hometown of Willis, Texas. He became the assistant superintendent of Willis ISD. So this was a subordinate to him when he was assistant superintendent at Willis ISD, as well as a local friend. So when I found this out, I sent him a message and I said, I finally hardly find this to be independent, being that you live in Willis ISD, you were the assistant superintendent of Willis ISD, and now we have all of a sudden a guy from Willis coming in to hear this. And he said, just because we work together doesn't mean we're friends, was his response. And I said, there had to have been a Google search that we could have typed in, that said mediator in Klein, Texas, mediator in Spring, Texas, mediator in Houston, and found somebody local, because at the end of the day, we're both responsible for our individual fees anyway, our individual costs associated with this anyway. And never did get a response on it. Sat down with somebody, and if I were to put out there in the public the letter of recommendation that this hearing officer wrote, this Dr. Timothy Walsh, keep in mind, his name is preceded by doctor, so which means he has extensive knowledge and he has extensive education, right? I got back a letter that called me Justine with an E throughout the entire document, where I received a letter where Klein ISD was spelled incorrectly. And then to take it a step further, I did nothing with it. I kept the letter because the letter comes to me and the letter goes directly to the board at the level 3 point. And then if you want to speak to the board, you have 2 minutes at the next scheduled board meeting to actually get up there and say your piece. Now, keep in mind, this process has been ongoing for approximately 100 days at this point. So you have tons of information that it's been lingering. So you just
You
keep
want to be
building.
heard.
You want to be heard, and
you want to
you
be
find out.
heard by somebody who matters in the district.
Right. Well, you get 2 minutes. So that's it. The recommendation goes straight to the board of trustees, or it's supposed to go straight to the board of trustees and to the person that's filed the complaint or the grievance. When I got the letter, I was fully prepared to go take that letter to the next scheduled board meeting and sit down and have my discussion with him. And my 2 minutes, not my discussion, my 2 minutes, which is in the open forum section of the board meetings, which is now quarantined off to the beginning of the board meetings. And which means there would have been nothing but Klein ISD personnel in the room, as well as anybody else that wanted to speak. And then all of a sudden I receive an email from Brian Greeny's assistant with a new attachment telling me that she's rewritten the hearing officer's recommendation to get rid of all the typos, the errors, the misspellings, so it could truly be done appropriately and, everything would be intact and in place. So my initial response out of the gate was, why are you, a Klein ISD employee, amending a third-party independent hearing officer's recommendation in any way, shape, or form? You should not be touching it. And I sent that to her along with her boss, Brian Greeny, and I was told it was just to clean it up for the board. Well, in my opinion, if that's the way they wrote the policy and that's supposed to go directly to the board, they should see who this person is. They should read this. They should see how bad it is. And they should say, who is this person? What fifth grader did you get to hear this? And what fifth grader wrote this letter, this recommendation? So the board, the governing body, right, the one that's supposed to steer the ship, can actually see who's involved and say, look, this person is obviously not qualified because look at this. But they modified it prior to it getting to them. And that's the part that upset me. So they altered a third party document.
No, say it won't happen. We already have proof from another person who paid an investigator how they alter documents that's illegal to alter. And if you guys want proof on that, you can let us know and we'll give you proof, because there was a investigation that happened with some documents that Klein illegally altered that they shouldn't. But to give this in a summary, why should a parent, why should a citizen, why should somebody care that the board, first off, the board did this. They allowed this to happen. Yes, the board, your current board did this. They're allowing this to continue. Nobody's being heard. Why should a parent care? Why should a teacher care? What are your final thoughts on this whole thing? Like, give me a Cliff Notes summary. I know that's
Cliff
hard with all the
Notes.
knowledge you have.
Yeah, so Cliff Notes summary is going to be difficult, but I'll do my best. Okay, so here we go. The reason why this should be so important to everybody in the district, whether you're a constituent, a teacher, a parent, or a student, this is your last line of recourse to right or wrong in the district. This policy, you're not going to be able to call the district office and get some central office and get somebody on the phone that's just going to resolve your policy or your problem, and all of a sudden you're done, right? It doesn't happen that way. So this is the governing policy for any complaint, whether it's against another teacher, whether it's against administration, whether it's against whoever. Um, it doesn't matter. This is your last form of recourse against the district, and other than legal. So you asked a question earlier about how many lawsuits. Well, this is one of the reasons why there are so many lawsuits, because people get involved in this process. And when it starts to get strung out like it does and it lingers, people get more and more angry at what's going on. And as they get more and more angry, they finally throw their hands up and they say, you know what? It's worth it. I'm going to find a lawyer and I'm giving them this information and let them handle it at that point, right? And that's why a lot of them fall off, because they end up getting a lawyer. A lot of them also fall off because people just get so sick and tired. I mean, it literally is a full-time job of keeping up with it, because they're always going to wash you through a couple different cycles before you move forward. And I can tell you right now that the number one way that they do that is, we talked about the 10-day window to file the grievance or complaint. They've now modified that to 15 days. Even if you file it promptly and you file it within the 15 school days, they're going to what they call a dismissal due to timeliness of filing. That's a first shot out of the gate from Klein ISD. So you spend the time, you put the paperwork together, you submit it, they wait 10 days and they come back with a dismissal for timeliness of filing. Pretty standard across the board. In these books that I have over here that I showed earlier, I can show you, if I went through there and highlighted all the ones that were dismissed for timeliness of filing, it's almost every one. Then you go into an appeal process for that. So appeal level 1 for timeliness of filing. They're going to come back and shoot you down immediately. Then you go to an appeal process 2 for timeliness of filing. They're going to shoot you down. Then you go to appeal process 3, which acts very similarly to FNG and DGBA, which is an independent party to hear it, that I just went through with another situation that I brought to the board's attention, or I brought to the school's attention. And so now I'm in a holding pattern now. I'm waiting for my response from this third party hearing officer to let me know if my initial grievance that was submitted has merit, so we can get all the way back to where we started. And that's what'll happen if he overturns what the district has said so far, and which let's just be honest, I'm not expecting that to happen, because it's never happened. The hit ratio on this is about 0%.
So
You have
as a
about,
taxpayer or a person, like we're in the Cliff Notes version here, this is what they can expect. You've been through it several times.
yep,
Other people, like
yep,
it's a pattern of no answers. It's a pattern of kicking the can down the road. We see it in FOIAs. We see it in grievances, which why do we even have a time period? And it boils down that it's the board's fault. You intend to make a change that to the board, like when you're elected, that would you do away with the first grievance period? That if somebody has a grievance, that there's no time period? Or, I mean, you have solutions, you have thoughts and ideas, and you may not want to tell them all because I know you've got your mind because when Klein does, they'll halfway do something that the
That
board
happened last year.
that we bring to their attention. They'll halfway do it, like check registers online like every other district. Just kidding. We'll put a link, but you won't be able to access it.
Right.
But so sum it up. Like what this really boils down to the board. The
What it
board
boils down to
allows
is
this to happen.
it's a policy that was written to drag things out. Like you said, kick the can down the street, right? So the intention is to drag it out without having to come to a conclusion. And when you do come to a conclusion, by that point, it's summertime or it's the following school year, and it never really goes away. So you're not going to shorten their timeline. So they try to wash you through as many cycles as they can to extend that timeline. And they want you to get frustrated. That's the whole point of the policy, is to get you frustrated to the point where you throw your hands up and say, I'm done. I'm done. And then a lot of people do that.
They leave. What our teacher retention, our student retention, like we have people leaving the district in
Yep.
droves. And this is an example of why, because we're not taking care of our house.
Right. And I have in those books, there's over somewhere between 250 and 300 Klein ISD employees that have contacted me, most of them teachers, almost all of them teachers, that have contacted me for advice because they know the policy. They've heard the board meetings. They've heard me discuss it. They've seen other people go down that. And there's an inherent fear factor with even filing a policy or a DGBA grievance or complaint against the district because of potential backlash and retaliation.
Retaliation,
So
absolutely.
they don't even fear. The big word is fear. And I'll leave you with this. I had a sit-down meeting with Deidre Davis from HR, from Klein ISD Central Office HR, the director of HR. And when I was talking about the policy and how skewed the policy is, she informed me that I was more knowledgeable about the policy than anybody on campus was, which I found that to be very strange, considering there is somebody listed in there as the governing principle of this policy. He's the director of chief of schools. So for her to say that, I found that to be very odd. The more we talked about it and we got into the weeds, she asked me if I'd be willing to give her free time during her summer break, which is the month of July, basically, because central office works not on the same contract schedule as teachers, to talk about DGBA because she's responsible for DGBA and making sure that DGBA is where it needs to be. When she found out how many people have contacted me from the district, she was in complete and utter awe about why are they not calling HR. She literally looked me in the eye and said, why are they calling you? You're not on the board. You're just a parent and a husband to an employee. Why are they calling you? And I said, well, I don't really want to give you an answer on that because then you'll know where to start. And I said, but you know what? I said, to make it better for Klein ISD, I will give you one word. And that word is fear. Fear, fear. These teachers and employees of the district are fearful because they have seen retaliation happen to other members of their teaching staff. They have seen this retaliation, it comes in many different forms, right? They've seen it play out. And so they don't want to push it forward. They want to get advice as to what they should do. And unfortunately, if you're not willing to go through the process, your only other source of recourse would be to hire an attorney and push it that way. So it's pay money for an attorney over here
Or leave the district.
or do this or leave the district. And I could tell you that from what I have in here, there's several people in there that have left the district. There's several people that have put in their resignation papers, shortly after they called me and talked about what their options were because they wanted to know the true inner workings of the DGBA policy. And in my opinion, Klein ISD as a business, right, as an institution, should be telling their employees, hey, if you have a problem, follow this policy. It's located here, right? Just like when in the corporate world, you tell your employees, if you have an issue, here's a link on the page. You click on that. You can put it in anonymously. You can put it however you want to. You can say what's happening, or it's an open door policy. Come speak to us anytime you need to. Unfortunately, that's not the way it's played out here in Klein ISD. So We could literally spend 4
Yeah, and I'm
days talking about the intricacies of the FNG and DGBA policy, the modifications that have been made to it. But one of the key things to know is that you are 100% correct. The policy was just cumbersome to begin with. And in August of 2024, it came before the board for vote. They voted and they made a couple of changes to it. That's when they made that. The one change for the better was giving you 10 to 15 days. The
ooh,
other change was did nothing, right? So now picture a kid that's been bullied, and just because I want to make sure this gets out there. Picture a kid that's been bullied and has truly become a recluse at that point and has brought themselves out of the bullying situation, but they've also shelled up. It may take them longer than 15 days to come out of that before they finally tell you what's wrong. And as parents, you only want to push so far because, especially the older they get, because, we all know our children and we all know what our children's limits are in a conversation. And if you're constantly sitting there pushing and pushing and pushing with the what's wrong, what's wrong, that's eventually you're going to get, some backlash and you're going to get some unwanted behaviors out of your child that are not typical. So if they waited a month and came forward with the truth and said, I'm being bullied at school by this kid, and this kid, you've passed your window. You can file it. It's going to get dismissed for timeliness. They will dismiss for timeliness even if you have a whole list of rules, laws, everything that's been violated in the process. That happened recently. And I want to bring that to everybody's attention. There's a teacher recently that filed a DGBA grievance against Klein ISD. She sat down and she had documentation out the wazoo of wrongdoing by the school, cover-ups, all kinds of stuff that was going on, whether it be monetarily, financially, how they were reporting to the state, everything. And she was dismissed for timeliness of filing. So the instance of what you're filing against doesn't really matter. So you can have all the evidence in the world and you can have all the proof in the world and you could literally have a mound. You could have a lawyer put together an entire file for you of everything that was wrongdoing. But if it's not filed timely from the day that it happened, so what's listed in there doesn't matter. It all comes down to the number of days it took you to put it on paper.
it comes down to the school board not wanting to do their job, and nobody wants to do their job to protect the kids. I think it's absolutely insane that they want to have that. That's why you have my vote, Justin. It's important we all get out, we vote, we share this with our family, we share this with our
Absolutely.
friends. It's not only Justin Bumpy Woolridge, we also are asking for your vote for Jack Velasquez. They're part of the change that we need in the district to bring back some common sense, to stop kicking the can down the and to help our kids and help our teachers to build that retention so we stop hemorrhaging good teachers and we stop hemorrhaging good kids, the parents that can just leave the district and take them somewhere else, put them in a charter school, go to a private school, or just hop on over to Tomball, Magnolia, or one of the other districts. So we appreciate you listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with Klein ISD, but share with your friends, get out and vote. That is what the most important thing is. We're here because we want to be the change and hopefully engage the community more to bring back that accountability. So I thank you for your
Absolutely.
time, Justin. Thank you,
Well, thank
everybody.
you.
Please share with your friends.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.